We're just part of a really privileged community, so we wanted to raise awareness for the issue that's so prevalent everywhere in America, and we want to mobilize the people here to take action and be part of this movement to better other people's lives.
Yeah, for sure. And we really just want to make sure that a privileged community like ours is doing everything that we can to help other people.
So much for coming. It is so great to see everyone out here today. And I won't take much time before we hear from our speakers, but I did want to say a few sentences. It is important for us to acknowledge our white privilege. White privilege is the inherent advantage white people have in not experiencing the insidious effects of racism. It is something every white person must recognize that they experience. I've seen in my peers reluctance to speak out on matters of police violence and racial injustice. And it truly pains me to see people with voices and resources in a privileged community like ours to be silent and not speak out. I hope that people in our community will go home today after this and reflect on their privilege and understand that their silence makes them a part of the problem. It is not enough to call yourself not racist. We each need to take actions to be actively anti-racist.
I teach at Washington University, and one thing I can say, I am so inspired by this young generation. You all are the future, so all young people, raise your hands. This is about you. You all are the ones with the courage. You all are the ones who are teaching us to keep our environment. You all are the ones who are doing the Me Too. And now you all are the ones who are leading the Black Lives Matter movement, because you can imagine possibilities. And I do think there is something about this moment that is very special. You look at your TVs and you never see so many black and white people out there together. So thank you, white people, for coming out. It is unfortunate that it's the death of George Floyd that brings us out. Rest in peace. My heart goes out to his mother and to his community, because when one person dies, the whole entire network is lost. They grieve. So thank you for coming out here for their family and for them. But this isn't just about George Floyd. Many of us remember the Rodney King beating. Many of us, who remembers that? Raise your hand. And you remember seeing him being beat from the helicopter camera. I got this on tape. And that was probably the first time that we saw police brutality up and in front. We knew about lynchings of the past, but that was the first public lynching that we witnessed. And we saw those police officers get off. Time and time again, we've seen people, black people, brown people, people suspended at the borders in cages, under siege by our state. So thank you for coming out. But this isn't just about adults. This type of racism starts from a young age. If you look at the national statistics, black children and brown children are 5 times more likely to be punished for something that they do in school compared to the exact same behaviors of their white counterparts. Tell me about white privilege. This isn't just about men. Say Her Name is a campaign that's out there as well, that was developed because black women's suffering was gone unnoticed. This isn't just about police violence. This is about structural racism in our society. This isn't about policing being bad. It's about policing going back to what it's supposed to be doing, protecting all of us. Some people say that the siege on black bodies with the policing isn't about policing broken. It is actually about how policing started as slave patrols. And we want to take back policing. If you remember the Ferguson days, the saying, whose streets?
Our streets.
Whose streets?
Our streets.
And the police officers thought they could say, these are our streets. Well, these are our streets. And as Clayton residents, as surrounding residents, it is our obligation to know where our funding goes. Look on the budget. Almost, probably more than 50% of the budget goes to what we call public safety. But yet it is the one place that citizen oversight is lacking. That you actually do not have a say in many places how police. That's what this movement is about. It's about saying my taxpayers are paying your dollars. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Democracy means you have to educate yourself about the budget. You have to educate yourself about best practices. We have to make sure collectively that best practices are in Clayton, that best practices are in U City, that best practices are in Richmond Heights. Wherever you live, those are up there, and that is what this movement is about. Woo! All right. So many of you know him. He's a familiar face. He serves on the school board of Clayton. He's been experiencing being singled out by the police since he was 10 years old. Asked to stand on the curb, put his hands back, 10 years old. My own children, who are 10 and 12, in this Clayton neighborhood, have been told, we will call the cops on you, when they were speeding down a hill on their bicycle. How many of your children have been told that they will have the cops called on them?
It was tough watching George Floyd put to sleep like a dog in a 10-minute process. Watching that man, the police officer, kneel down as passerbys and people who were watching the event take place, telling them to get off. He's dead, he's dying, he can't breathe, was a lot to take in. And what's even more rough is trying to explain to two young black males who look just like George Floyd. My 10 and 12-year-old had to watch that. I had to explain it to him in an honest conversation about racism, about what it looks like. And they're still processing it. I think we're all still processing it. When I think about it, when I was running for school board, I too could have been George Floyd. Now, some of you all say, wait a minute, not in Clayton. That couldn't happen. No, I could have been George Floyd.
We are perceived however they want to perceive us. That is the reason why I can't venture off my college campus alone in the middle of rural Ohio for fear of being shot. That is the reason whenever I see a cop on the road, or anywhere for that matter, not only does my anxiety spike, but the actual real possibility that those be my final moments if something goes awry.
We're here.
Because in those instances, I know that I won't be seen for who I am, but I will be seen through the perverted lens created by racial values which this country has held for centuries. It is this disgustingly twisted perception of reality that allowed that Minneapolis cop to kneel on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes, because he didn't see George as a man, and he didn't see George as a father. It is this disgustingly twisted version of reality that allows the president to call us thugs and threaten us when we are simply fighting for the right to breathe. And it is this blindness that still allows members of the white community to believe that they have no hand in this, that we brought this suffering upon ourselves, when we are suffering at the hands of a system that they've created. And I bear no hatred when I say this, but this blindness is a sickness. And until it's cured, history is going to keep repeating itself. But I know many of you personally, and I truly believe that this generation can make a difference. We have the power, and we have the resources. We have the passion, and we have the awareness. So please open your eyes and continue to learn, as I know many of you have been doing these past few weeks. Help others do so as well. And let's take action. Let's create an America in which we are all seen and heard.
I'm walking through the neighborhood, I'm next door at the house, and the police roll up. And I'm a free black dude, right? So they hop out the car, and they start walking up the stairs. I want to say they're about eight feet apart, these police officers. And the officer says to the owner of the house, well, he says in our direction, what's going on, man? And I start to talk, and he starts to talk to the owner of the house. But quickly in that conversation, I was alienated. It wasn't about me. He didn't want to hear what I had to say. I was convicted. In his eyes, I was the offender. In some capacity, I did something wrong.
In America, and especially in cities like Clayton, police take orders from the white people who live here. Calling the police on a black or brown person in this country means that you have decided personally that whatever that person has done is bad enough that they could and should get killed for it, because statistically that's what happens. I personally had my home address leaked and police threatened on me in my own neighborhood because my white neighbors didn't like my complexion, and that's not even a fraction of the abuse that black people experience in this country at the hands of what we like to call white privilege. Because rich white communities feel entitled to have police at their beck and call, as if protect and serve means to protect white property and serve white people. That type of culture won't be fixed until police are completely eliminated and replaced with something more productive, like in Minneapolis, where the city council has just unanimously voted to disband Minneapolis PD and replace it with a community-led justice initiative.
Clayton, as a financial epicenter within St. Louis, surely has the funds necessary to make a large impact through donations alone. If donations, protesting, and writing to your politicians doesn't feel like it's enough, why don't we start small and focus on driving out the systematic racism within this very community? Like wearing a mask and asking others to do so, we are responsible for our community, including calling out its faults for its own good. I'd like to start by calling out Clayton High School and continue the momentum started by a fellow alumni. I moved to Clayton the summer before 9th grade from a very privileged private K-8 Jewish school. After taking a few tests and meeting with my counselor, I was told I was not smart enough for most every honors class available to me. These words resonated with me for a long time, and my first semester grades reflected that. I'd never received such low grades. I've always had supportive parents who put time into my education. They pushed me, and luckily I was able to override the decision of multiple teachers who told me I wasn't smart enough for their courses. When busing in kids from lower income areas, even if it starts with kindergarten, so much is already different with kids whose parents couldn't have time to do what my parents did for me, or what Clayton parents do for their kids. Then the gap only distances as rich white kids get moved into advanced programs and continue the separation all throughout their schooling. Personally, I can name countless black students who were discouraged from taking honors or AP courses, and some never did, or some took very few, who would have undoubtedly excelled in all of those courses. So as a community, we should question, why do we have gatekeeping counselors telling kids they're not enough, instead of helping black kids reach for the stars? Because I know my close white friends will reaffirm they never had any of these issues. If Clayton is so liberal and progressive like we portray ourselves, why are my old white English teachers and old history teachers allowed to say the N-word in class, no matter the justification? Why did I only have one black teacher at Clayton, and it was only just the PE teacher? Why was it that the only times black efforts were cheered on at the school was during sporting events? Why is it that so many light-skins who are closer in proximity to whiteness, being me as well, why are we the ones given the majority of the platform? And why were so many token black Clayton students asked to be the ones to lead this protest, whose organization is accredited to white students?
Now let me make it clear that I'm very grateful for my education at Clayton High School, and that I acknowledge the steps that the administration has taken towards being diverse and inclusive. However, during my time at Clayton, like Liam said, there have been multiple instances of teachers using the N-word and black students being treated differently and discouraged. And way too often the students aren't listened to. If Clayton wants to continue to pride themselves on inclusion and diversity, they need to make a real commitment to listening to the black community.
I'm not here to belittle anyone's efforts and just yell nonsense about Clayton's ignorance. After all, calling out those in your close community is quite hard. Recently, I've had a few arguments with my white father, as I've called him out on a few beliefs I see as harmful. Not because I hate him, but because calling out those close to you is necessary. No one likes arguing with the ones they are close to, but if your community's beliefs oppress or take other people's lives, it is your duty to combat that. By staying silent, you are enabling those wrongdoings. There is no room for leniency. Real change will come with a collective change in mind. Go out and change people's minds, and yes, that means your school, your close friends, and even your racist extended families. Question everyone's morals and every system around you. Start small with your community and branch out as far as you can.
You can either let it happen and be complicit, or you can believe in Black Lives Matter and control the narrative. I need you all to control the narrative. So this is what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to say Black Lives Matter, and I want you all to say control the narrative. Black Lives Matters! Control the narrative! Black Lives Matters! Control the narrative!
So the next time you feel the urge to call the police, especially on a black person, close your phone, open your wallet, and donate to a local group like Arch City Defenders so that we can have a future where justice doesn't mean just us.
I'd also like to make an announcement / shout out to the CHS class of 2020 for pledging to match all of today's Venmo donations up to $2,020. This will be this is our class gift, and we thought that it would be the most meaningful contribution right now.
We will keep the names George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, and countless others whose lives were so unjustly taken. We will keep them alive in our consciousness, and we will keep fighting until we get the equality and the justice we deserve.
What personally brought me out is that I have a son, a black son, and I care about his life, and I want to make sure to expose him to what's happening in our world, and I want him to know that his life is valued. So that was the reason why I brought him out.
Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist cops have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist cops have got to go. Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter.
Here we go. Hey, hey, ho, ho.
These racist cops have got to go.
Hey, hey, ho, ho.
These racist cops have got to go.
Hello, hello, Clayton. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
No racist.
Police.
No racist.
Police.